Welcome back to the deep dive. We're doing something a little different today. Usually we take a really wide-angle lens to a big topic, right? History of coffee, science of sleep, that kind of thing.
Right, the broad strokes.
But today we are zooming way, way in on a single specific chapter of ancient text. And I have to admit, when I first saw the research you sent over, I was a little skeptical.
Skeptical. Why is that?
Well, we're talking about the book of Genesis, and when most people think of Genesis, they think of the blockbusters.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the creation of the universe, Garden of Eden, the Great Flood, Tower of Babel. I mean, huge cinematic events.
World-changing stuff.
Exactly. But the research points out something that completely threw me. The longest single narrative chapter in the entire book isn't about any of those things.
No, it is not.
It's Genesis chapter 24, 67 verses long. And it's essentially a story about a servant going on a road trip.
A very long road trip.
To find a wife for his master's son. So the question I have to ask right off the bat is just, why? Why does the author slam on the brakes to spend 67 verses on a marriage errand?
It is a jarring shift, isn't it? You go from, Sodom and Gomorrah to this really quiet human drama.
Yeah.
But that length, the sheer amount of real estate it takes up, that's the signal. It's telling us that to the original author, this wasn't just some domestic errand. It was about the survival of the entire project.
Because of who's involved?
Exactly. Look at the stakes. Abraham is 137 years old. His wife, Sarah, she's died. And his son, Isaac, the child of the promise.
The one the whole thing depends on.
The one. He's at least 37 years old.
And he's single?
He's single. And in the ancient world, a single patriarch is a dead end.
It's over.
It's over. Abraham's entire life has been built on this promise from God, but right now, that great nation is just one unmarried man in a tent. He's facing a crisis.
So he's got to secure the covenant line, but he makes it complicated. He has this one very strict rule. He calls his oldest servant, traditionally people think it's Eliezer, but he's not named here,
Right.
and tells him, you cannot get a wife from the local Canaanites. You have to go all the way back to my homeland, Mesopotamia, and find her there.
And to make sure the servant gets how serious this is, Abraham makes him perform this ritual that, well, for us today, it definitely needs a bit of unpacking.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. The text says he told the servant to put his hand under his thigh to swear the oath. I'm assuming this is not just a quirky ancient handshake.
It definitely stands out. But in the ancient Near East, this was a deadly, serious legal gesture. The thigh is a euphemism for the reproductive organs. It's connected to the source of life, to progeny.
So by placing his hand there.
He's swearing on the future of the family. One of the sources we looked at suggests the implication is actually terrifying.
How so?
It implies that if the servant broke this oath, if he failed, the children yet to be born to Abraham would be wound to avenge his unfaithfulness.
Wow. So he's swearing on the very life he's being sent to create. That puts the pressure on.
It signals this isn't a shopping trip. It's a mission to save the future.
So we have the setup. High-stakes mission, terrifying oath, 500-mile journey. But what I found fascinating in the notes is that you're framing this story not as a romance, but as a masterclass in a concept called providence.
Yes.
Well,
This chapter is widely considered the world standard for understanding providence.
we hear that word a lot, but I want to drill down on it. The sources make a really sharp distinction between providence and miracles. To me, and probably to a lot of you listening, those just sound like two words for God doing stuff. What's the real difference?
And the huge distinction. A miracle is when the natural order is, suspended, overruled.
Like the Red Sea parting.
Exactly. Or healing a man born blind. Those are interruptions of physics. They're loud, undeniable.
And providence.
Providence is quiet. It's God working within the natural world, using ordinary things, travel, thirsty camels, a conversation at a well to accomplish his will. One source called it the invisible influence.
So no lightning bolts.
No lightning bolt. It's more of a contrast with something like fortuna or luck.
Right, the idea that the servant isn't just hoping to get lucky.
Right. Luck is random, a happy accident. Providence implies an architect, a belief that there's a script being written behind the scenes, but it's being written through the natural flow of life.
And what's cool about this servant is he gets that. He doesn't just sit and wait for a bride to magically appear. The notes call his method seek, follow, rest.
He packs the camels. He walks the 500 miles. Providence invites you to participate. You have to put yourself in the path of the blessing.
That brings us to his actual strategy. I mean, this guy is kind of the unsung hero of the whole book. He has to find a needle in a haystack.
A very specific needle.
And one of our sources, the 66 and 52 breakdown, it outlines what they call the 6 C's of his decision making.
It's a fantastic framework. It shows that discernment back then wasn't just about, a gut feeling. It was a process.
Let's run through them because I think they're really practical. The
Right.
first one is command of Scripture.
Or in his case, the command of his master.
Huh.
He started with boundaries. No Canaanites. Before he even prayed, he knew it was out of bounds.
Narrows the field. Then there's compelling of the Spirit. He feels guided to a specific well. In continual seeking, he's always praying. But the fourth one is my favorite because it feels so unspiritual, common sense.
I love that one too. We sometimes think a spiritual decision means ignoring logic.
Right.
But the servant was looking for specific character traits. Hardworking, hospitable. He wasn't looking for a vision. He was looking for a partner who could handle life in a nomad's camp.
Which leads to number 5, circumstantial signs, the test he sets up. We'll get to that. And finally, Council of Saints, which is later, with her family. But I want to pause on his behavior at the well. There's this tiny detail in verse 21 that I totally missed. It says, "The man watched her silently."
That is such a pivotal moment.
Why? I mean, it sounds a little creepy just staring at someone working.
Well, context is key. But think about it. When we're anxious for an answer, what do?
We jump in, we try to force it,
We rush in, we try to help, we try to nudge the conversation where we want it to go.
we manipulate the outcome.
Exactly.
Huh?
But the text says he watched her silently to see if the journey was a success. He was gathering data. He didn't introduce himself, didn't offer to help. He just waited to see if her actions, her fruit, matched up with his prayer.
That's a tough discipline, letting reality reveal itself before you project your hopes onto it.
It's a masterclass in patience.
Okay, speaking of facts, we have to talk about the test itself. The centerpiece. He prays, "Let the woman who offers water to me and my camels be the one."
The famous camel test.
Now, on the surface, this just sounds like he's looking for someone polite. Is she nice? But one of our sources broke down the math on this, and my jaw just hit the floor. Nice doesn't begin to cover it.
The math changes the whole scene. If you don't do the math, you miss who Rebekah is.
Okay, walk us through it. I want everyone listening to really picture this.
So the servant has 10 camels. A single thirsty camel, after a long journey, can drink up to 25 gallons of water
25 gallons. That's like a small bathtub full of water.
for one camel. And he has 10.
Okay, so we're looking at up to 250 gallons of water.
Exactly. And Rebekah isn't using a hose. She's got a jar,
A clay jar.
a clay jar. Archaeologically, it probably held about 3 gallons. And water weighs about 8 pounds a gallon. So that's a good 24, 25 pounds she's hauling each time.
So she needs to move 250 gallons, 3 gallons at a time.
She is making somewhere between 80 and 100 trips. And these wells weren't just a bucket on a rope. You often had to walk down steps into a cistern, fill the jar, and then haul it back up.
80 times. That's not a favor. That's a CrossFit workout. That's hours.
It is grueling physical labor. When she said, "I will water your camels too," she was volunteering for an entire afternoon of back-breaking work for a total stranger.
That is the aha moment.
Yeah.
This wasn't a test of, is she friendly? It was a test of, does she have grit?
Precisely. The servant knew what life in Abraham's camp required. They were pioneers. He wasn't looking for a princess. He was looking for a partner who could build a nation. The math proves she was that person. Industrious, generous, and incredibly strong.
It totally shifts her from this passive prize to an absolute powerhouse. But, we have to address the elephants, or in this case, the camels in the room. The sources flagged a historical controversy here.
A camel controversy, yes, a favorite among critics.
Right. The argument that camels weren't domesticated in the Middle Bronze Age, around 2000 BC. So the story is anachronistic, like George Washington driving a pickup truck.
That was a prevailing view for a long time, that they were only widely domesticated much later, maybe at the 1000 BC. But our sources point to more recent archaeology that really challenges that.
What's changing the timeline?
Well, you have findings at a site called Timnah. It's a copper smelting site. They found camel bones there in layers dating to around 1900 BC, right in the patriarchal window.
But a bone just means a camel was there. Could have been wild.
True, but this is where it gets specific. They found bones with wear patterns and even rope holes that indicate these animals were carrying loads that were being used as pack animals.
So the bones tell the story of the labor.
They do. And there's other evidence from Mari, rock art from Almagar. Now, to be fair, they probably weren't as common as donkeys. They were a luxury item, a status symbol for a wealthy chief.
Which fits Abraham perfectly.
Exactly. So the idea that they were impossible, the newer evidence just doesn't support that.
It's good context. It grounds the story. Now let's pivot to the legal side of things. Because after the camel test, the servant starts handing out gold.
Rings, bracelets.
It looks like generosity, but it's actually business.
It's a transaction. It's a marriage contract. Marriage in the ancient Near East was a transfer of authority from her father's household to her husband's. The gold wasn't just jewelry, it was the mohar, the bride price.
Like a down payment.
Exactly. It compensated the family for the loss of her labor, which, as we just saw, was significant.
And the sources also mention a dowry. Rebekah leaves with servants. That's different.
Different direction.
Yeah.
The mohar goes from the groom to the family. The dowry comes with the bride from her family. It was her insurance policy. If the marriage failed or her husband died, those resources were her protection.
That's an important nuance. It sounds unromantic to us, but this system was actually designed to protect the woman's welfare.
Absolutely. It provided stability.
Speaking of protocol, there's this moment at the end of the journey I found curious. They arrive, Rebekah sees Isaac, and the text says she dismounted from her camel.
Genesis 24.64. She alighted.
Why does the text point that out? Is it just that she was tired of writing?
I'm sure she was, but no. This is where knowing the ancient laws just lights up the text. In Akkadian and Nusi texts, descending from the riding beast was a formal legal act.
It's a declaration.
It is. It symbolizes respect for her new husband.
Yeah.
It marks the transition from traveler to resident. She's saying, I have arrived. This is my place now.
And then she veils herself.
Yes. And according to things like the Code of Hammurabi, the veil, in this context, denotes betrothal exclusivity. She's signaling, I am now taken. I am set apart for this man. It's the final seal on the contract.
It's amazing how every little gesture is loaded with legal weight.
It really gives the text a ring of authenticity.
So we have the history, the law, the providence, but there's one more layer the sources urge us to look at. They call it the golden thread.
This is the theological or typological layer. For centuries, readers have seen that the characters in this story align almost too perfectly with the core story of the gospel.
Let's connect those dots. I'm usually wary of allegory, but this one, it does seem to line up who's who.
Well, you have Abraham, the father who is willing to sacrifice his son,
Genesis 22.
and now he seeks a bride for that son. In the pattern, he represents God the Father.
Okay, and Isaac?
Isaac is the beloved son, the heir. He's been metaphorically received back from the dead after the sacrifice. He represents the son, the Christ figure.
And the servant. This is the one I find most interesting.
The servant is fascinating. He's never named in this chapter. He never speaks of himself, only of the master and the son's glory. He travels to a far country to call a bride out.
That sounds a lot like the role of the Holy Spirit.
It fits perfectly. The guide who brings the bride to the son.
Which leaves Rebekah.
Rebekah represents the church, the believer. Think about her situation. She's invited to leave her home, her old life, to go on a long, dangerous journey.
Guided by a servant she just met.
To marry a bridegroom she has never seen.
That is a really powerful image. It reframes the whole question her family asks her. Will you go with this man?
Exactly. It makes her answer, I will go. An act of faith that mirrors the Christian experience. Believing in what you haven't seen, trusting the guide.
And when she finally meets Isaac, he's meditating in the field. He comes out to meet her.
And the text ends so tenderly. It says, Isaac brought her into his mother's tent. He took her as his wife, and he loved her. And then it adds, so Isaac was comforted after his mother's death.
It's a story of restoration.
It is. It's this picture of ultimate joy.
Wow. It's a lot for one chapter. We've covered 250 gallons of water, Akkadian law, camel domes.
It's a dense text. It rewards a close read.
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to one thing, Rebekah's agency. Because we hear arranged marriage and think these women were just pawns.
That's a crucial point. It was arranged, yes, but remember when the servant wants to leave? Her brother and mother want her to stay for another week or 10 days.
Right, they're stalling.
So to break the deadlock, what do? They say, let's call the young woman and ask her.
They asked for her consent.
And she gave it. I will go. We see this in other ancient legal tablets. Consent was a recognized step. She wasn't kidnapped. She chose this future. She was an active participant.
Which brings us to a final, maybe provocative thought to chew on.
Go on.
We've talked about God's plan, his providence, but back in verse 5 and again in 39, the servant asks Abraham a question that haunts the whole mission. He asks, what if the woman will not come?
It's the one variable they can't control.
And Abraham doesn't say God will force her. He says essentially, if she refuses, you're free from the oath.
The mission is aborted.
So here's the thought. Even with divine providence, the human element of no was still possible. The entire plan, the covenant, the nation, it all hinged on a teenage girl in Mesopotamia saying yes.
It's the mystery of how God works.
Mm-hmm.
He drafts the plan, sends the guide, but he still dignifies us with the choice to get on the camel or stay at the well.
How do you balance the confidence of God's plan with the reality that other people still have to say yes? That's the tension the servant walked in, and I think we still walk in it today.
Well said. It's a partnership, not a puppet show.
Something to think about on your own journey. That's all for this deep dive into Genesis 24. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.